Hello and welcome. This is another class. This one is Intro to Eve Careers. My name is Amoni Panala. You might also know me as Zipporah Panala or Camille Panala. I am a teacher, FC, and mentor for Eve University. And today we're going to go over another class to benefit Eve University. I get a lot of requests when I teach classes. People are always asking me, will this class be recorded? And generally speaking, my classes are not recorded. So I thought I would do recorded versions of my classes where I don't have um, class in attendance so that I can protect their privacy and also um, try to get the best version of the class. So, like I said, this is Intro to Careers in Eve. This is all about how to make money. Money makes it possible to do all kinds of things, and some people just enjoy being able to make money in the space game. So, let's talk about the different ways to make money in Eve. We're going to cover a number of different ways that you can make money, starting off with the Air Career Program. This is going to be what most new players to the game are going to experience. It is optional to do the Air Career Program, but you can make some decent starting money to get you going, get your first ships sorted. We'll also talk about PvE, we'll talk about exploration, we'll talk about resource extraction, industry, so that's your mining, gas huffing, or gas harvesting. We'll talk about trade and hauling, PvP, and then we'll talk about some next steps going forward. So the Air Career Program is something that happens in the background of the game as you're playing. It rewards you for trying different things. The Air Career Program tracks what you are doing in game and occasionally will notify you, hey, you did this thing, congratulations. By default, when you start playing EVE Online, you should have a button on the right-hand side that is dedicated to tracking your air career progress. So if you are curious about what kinds of things do I need to do to progress the air career program, you can look at that and it'll track all the different things. So things like scanning down cosmic signatures, right? If you're really into exploration, you can scan down a bunch of things. And I will point out that if you do the career agent missions, those missions that you're assigned once you get out of the tutorial, you can knock out quite a bit of the air career program just by doing those career agent missions because they cover a number of different aspects of the game as an introduction, including mission running, uh, resource harvesting. It'll also go over exploration, manufacturing, things like that. And all those things contribute to your progress in the air career program. And the benefit is that you get some money from it, and the big thing is you get skill points or SP. Now the skill points are uh, nothing to snuff at because we're talking about 750,000 skill points, right? As a new player, that means you can use those skill points to get into new ships or uh, inject some support skills so that you can fly the ships that you want to fly. Now, the Air Career Program is useful for encouraging you to try new things, but it is also worth saying that it is not everything. Um, it's particularly not going to really encourage you to do a lot of PvP. I know that uh, there are markers for how many ships you've lost, how many ships you've destroyed, things like that. But even then, most people just blow up some shuttles, uh, go out with a buddy, or use an alt and blow up some shuttles. Um, it's not super in depth, so there's plenty of room to develop and grow. And I don't want you to be discouraged if you're working through the air career program and you're like, all this stuff is kind of boring. Well, it's only the beginning, and things get a lot more exciting as you get more advanced. So think of the air career program and the activities that you do in the air career program as just a little taste test of what is out there in New Eden. So, as I hinted at with the career agent missions, PvE is oftentimes referring to mission running or crabbing and uh, running combat anomalies or going to agents and requesting missions from them. There are, I know my presentation says security missions are the most popular, but I think probably that's going to be tied with distribution missions just because distribution missions are relatively straightforward and simple. Um, they are a wide variety of activities, even when you narrow it down to I'm going to run security missions or I'm going to run distribution. But it all starts with just docking in a station, and you'll notice on the right hand side there's agents, and it'll tell you, hey, these are the agents that are available. If you're not seeing that, you might need to switch the tab in the station on the right hand side. So sometimes it'll say guests or hangar. You just need to tab over to the one that says agents, and that'll give you a list of agents. To start out, you're going to need to do level 1, and the money from level 1 is going to be meh, nothing great, but when you're just getting started, it's not terrible. You're going to get money, and sometimes you're going to get other things like you might get a ship, you might get BPCs or BPOs, um, so you can use those to build things. Um, you're going to get loyalty points, which can be redeemed for a variety of things depending on which corporation, which uh, faction that you're getting loyalty points from. And you're also going to get standings. Now, standings are a bit of a hard thing to grasp as a new player, but essentially it's just your reputation with different corporations and the different empires, right? So you're going to have a reputation with the corporations that you run missions for, and you may end up doing missions that go against other corporations and other empires. If you're running missions for the Amar, you might lose standings with the Minmatar. If you're running missions for the Galente, you might lose standings with the Keldari. So be aware of that. There are a bunch of guides to missions on the Eve University Wiki, so I highly recommend that you check those out if that's something that interests you. You can do them solo or you can do them with a friend, and they scale up pretty nicely. So once you've done, some L1s, L2s, your level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, if you want to expand out, that's when you can start doing the epic arcs. Now, some of you will have already started or maybe even completed the Sisters of Eve epic arc, Bloodstained Stars, but there are more epic arcs that you can do if you're interested in that. There are epic arcs for each of the empires, as well as pirate epic arcs. There are cosmos missions, and I will warn you, the cosmic missions you can only do once. Most of the other missions you can repeat, including the Sisters of Eve epic arc. You can do that once every 3 months. Cosmos missions you can only do once. And as I said, you can get started doing missions right after finishing the tutorial. In fact, it's going to encourage you to do missions with the career agents. It is mostly safe to do so in high-sec. Uh, most people are going to just leave you alone. Once in a blue moon, you might come across somebody who is just out to give you a hard time, and it's not even personal, that's just the way they play the game. It's very annoying, but I wouldn't stress too much about it because it's relatively rare. It is a pretty consistent way of making money. You know that after you complete a mission, you're going to you're going to get paid. It'll tell you how much you're going to get paid, both in ISK as well as LP. It'll also show you if you're getting any like special rewards, like a ship or a BPC, a anything like that. Maybe a module. Uh, the downside is, of course, that you can do enough missions where you feel like you're doing the same thing over and over again. And in fact, when I did distribution missions, I was actually doing the same missions over and over again because there are only so many level 1 missions with one particular agent. So you can run enough missions that you end up doing the same mission over again. If you're doing it by yourself, it can get pretty lonely. Uh, I highly recommend that you keep an eye out for any mission running events on the calendar, because then you can do it with friends, um, and it can be a good way to meet new people in the university, meet your fellow Unistas, have a good chat while you're running these missions. And I also said that at level 1, the rewards are pretty meh, pretty pretty modest, pretty low. But once you get into the 2s, 3s, and 4s, then you're going to start seeing an increase in how much you're making, both in ISK and in LP. Similar to mission running is ratting or crabbing. This is when you go out to asteroid belts or you go to combat anomalies, which are also known as green sites. Some can be found through cosmic signatures, so kind of combining exploration with uh, PvE. But essentially, what you're doing is you're looking for NPC hostile ships that you can blow up. And you can find them in asteroid belts. You can find them in these combat sites. Usually, these combat sites are 2, 3, maybe even 4 waves. The rewards come in a few different varieties. You're going to get money for destroying these NPCs in the form of bounties. Bounties pay out in increments, so you might destroy an NPC in an asteroid belt. You're not going to see the money right away. It's going to happen on a server tick, so about 15 minutes or so. You can also find things in the wrecks, especially when you are getting to much more challenging combat anomalies, or you're in low sec or null sec. Those NPCs are going to drop things, and you can find in their wrecks. They're going to have good stuff that you can sell or use yourself. You can also get escalations, which is essentially like a continuation of whatever you were doing. This is particularly true of combat anomalies. You'll get like a little message and it says, you did the thing, but there's more that you can do. Go to this system and continue the adventure or whatever. The escalations are going to be harder. They're going to be more dangerous, but they're also going to give you significantly better money and rewards. The money that you make, at least when you get started, is not going to be very much. And the rewards, especially in high sec, are going to be pretty meh, pretty mediocre. Once you move into places like low sec and null sec and you're doing this, now you're going to start making more ISK. Now you're going to start seeing better rewards. You're going to start finding loot drops that are actually worth something. I used to go around to low sec systems and I would go to the asteroid belts and destroy what were called clone troopers, and they would drop these clone trooper tags that are used to repair your security status after committing some piracy. Those things can sell for quite a pretty penny. It's an option. Now, the benefit to ratting is that you don't have to have any standings. We talked about in missions how uh, running missions with certain agents is going to improve your standings with that corporation, with the empire that they're affiliated with. It can also sometimes lower your standings with other corporations and other empires. Ratting does not do that. The only standings that you're going to lose are standings with the pirate faction that you blew up. And that's not super important. It is a fairly reliable income. When you're just getting started, it can be hard to get a sense of how much you've made because you're going to get bounties and they come in on the server tick. plus you have a bunch of stuff in your cargo that you will need to sell. But after a little bit of time, after doing it for a little while, you're going to get a sense of how much money you can make in an hour uh, doing this. And there are a number of third-party tools and resources that help you figure out, okay, how can I increase the money I make ratting by ISK per hour, right? And if you stay in high sec, it's fairly safe. Same with missioning. It's people are generally going to leave you alone. The most annoying thing that happens is sometimes people will warp in and blow up the ship that you were trying to blow up, and so you don't get the bounty, you don't get the loot, um, but it is fairly safe. Once you move into low sec and null sec, it is more likely that somebody might try to come after you. When I was ratting in low sec to get those clone trooper tags, people would try to come after me, and all I did was I warped off before they could get to me. So it is kind of boring because it feels like you're doing the same thing over and over again. Um, this is something you probably don't want to do for extended periods of time because it's just going to become that much more tedious. You can do it with friends though, and perhaps the benefit of that is getting to just hang out with friends, hang out with your fellow Unistas. And like I said, when you move into low sec and null sec, that's where there is some risk, but also if you see people in local that are not in the uni or they're not blue, probably time to think about getting out. The one benefit to ratting and PvE in general is that it does scale up, so you can start very basic, very simple, earning modest disc, modest LP, but then as your skills improve, as you start to be able to fly bigger and better ships, you can start looking at more advanced forms of PvE, one of them being incursions. Incursions are sort of like an event-like mission. Um, they are, like their name suggests, an incursion of a faction known as Sancha. Sancha shows up in a specific system and they start spreading out. They have their ships everywhere. They're flying around the system. They've got specific combat anomalies that you can warp to. It is advanced, and I really do mean advanced, because if you make mistakes, you will lose your ships very easily. So it's important. There are communities that do incursions exclusively. They run incursions all the time. Um, Eve University has its own incursions community, and as you can see on my presentation, it's called nomadic, and the reason for this is Sancha doesn't stay in the same place. They move around. So you will have incursions in high sec, low sec, null sec. Eve University incursions community does high sec. They run vanguards. Um, they run the vanguard system sites. Sancha will be there for a few days, and then after enough of their ships have been destroyed, they withdraw and move to another system. So the incursions community for Eve University goes from place to place to place every few days, following wherever Sancha goes, just blowing them up again and again and again. And the money is really good, and it gets paid out as soon as you finish a combat site. You also get some decent LP, and like I said, you can redeem LP at different stations for things like modules, implants, blueprints, you name it, there's probably a station that has it. And it's probably some of the best money that you can make in high sec. Alternatively, you might decide that you like challenging yourself on a solo basis. Abyssals are probably going to be your thing. Abyssals are little filaments that transport you to a special little pocket of space called abyssal space. You have 3 rooms that you have to clear of enemies. It is much more technically demanding. You're going to need to manually pilot. You're going to need to manage your ammunition. You're going to need to make sure that your shields stay up. You're going to need to make sure that you don't get nuded out. All these different things. Abyssals have weather, which impacts your ability to fly, your ability to shoot, whatever the case may be. If you mess up in abyssals, you could lose your ship and you will lose your pod. Abyssals have a time. There's a clock that runs down from you get 20 minutes to clear all 3 rooms in the abyssal space. If you don't clear it in 20 minutes, your ship blows up, and so does your pod. Most people do abyssals by themselves. You can do them with friends. You can do them with 3 frigates. So you and 2 friends can run an abyssal together. Or you can do 2 destroyers. So you and a buddy can run abyssals together. But most people generally use a cruiser and they go in by themselves. Now, we talked a little bit about exploration when I mentioned that you can find combat sites by scanning down cosmic signatures. That is sort of at the heart of what exploration is. Exploration isn't just going out and seeing cool things, although that is definitely part of it. You're also going to have the opportunity to scan down either data sites or relic sites. So you have these giant satellites or giant computers in space. They're just kind of left there, right? Either they were forgotten about or um, they're not being actively protected by whoever put them there. And you can scan them down with uh, probes and then warp to them, and then you hack into these towers, or in the case of relic sites, you're excavating some old ruins and wrecks of uh, sites that were important at one time. Basically, you get to be Indiana Jones, right? The hacking minigame, right? Once you get to the site, you're going to see a bunch of cans. You use a data or a relic analyzer to hack into these cans, depending on what kind of site it is. The hacking minigame is kind of its own thing. Um, in the Intro to Exploration class, I will explain more in depth how to sort of get through the minigame, but it's worth saying you have this little minigame that's hacking. If you've played Mass Effect, this minigame is going to look familiar to you. Once you've sort of gotten a handle on that, you can advance to ghost sites, which are more or less the same thing with even more danger. The cans will blow up if you fail the hack, and you have a time limit after which some enemies will warp in and shoot at your ship. So it can be pretty exciting. And the money's not bad, especially if you're willing to go into wormholes, if you're willing to go into lowsec and nullsec, which is not nearly as dangerous as some people might lead you to believe. Exploration is very easy to start. In fact, if you are a member of Eve University, we have ships that are free on contract that you can get. If you're not sure how to pull those contracts down, drop it in the Discord. Someone will be happy to walk you through the steps. Um, Exploration will force you to learn important skills as a pilot, not necessarily the skills that you're training in your training queue, but like you as a person are going to develop certain skills that will apply across the board, right? Learning how to use uh, learning how to use probes and scan things down is going to be useful in a number of different circumstances. Learning how to use dscan is going to be super useful in a number of different circumstances. Um, you will occasionally find sites in nullsec and wormholes that will net you quite a big payout. So exploration, I highly recommend it. Exploration can be lonely. It is generally done by yourself. I will say some of the most fun I've had doing exploration has been with friends, so never underestimate the power of friendship. It's the best ship in the game. People will try to find you and come after you and blow you up. It's sort of a hobby for wormholers. So just be aware of that. Um, it should never discourage you from doing it, especially since you can get a replacement ship for free from the university. Uh, it is a bit of a toss up as to how much money you're going to make. Sometimes you will hack a can and it will give you really good money. Other times you'll loot the can and basically all you got was some coal. So keep that in mind, but definitely consider it as an option. Resource extraction. This is definitely a popular one for new folks to try out because you're given everything that you need to get started. This is mining. This is gas harvesting. You can find this in all areas of space. High sec, low sec, null sec, wormhole space, Potchman. You can find it everywhere. At the beginning, you're probably going to be mining either asteroid belts or moon goo. Depending on whether you're a member of Eve University or another corporation, you're probably going to get started in a venture. You can work your way up to mining barges, then to exhumers. Maybe you want an orca so you can provide boosts or porpoise. Once you have a handle on the basics, you can look at training into gas harvesting. You can train into ice mining. The mining is generally done maybe together but apart, right? Like you might be in a belt with a bunch of your fellow Unistas, but you may not necessarily be chatting with each other. Other times you might have things like a shared can day or a shared can event in which everybody gets together. There are orcas or porpoises on grid, and everybody's mining together. You're all chatting and having a good time on comms in standing fleet, and it's a good time. It's really fun. Sometimes you might have wormhole ops where a group of you dive into a wormhole, warp to a gas site, and now you're harvesting gas. And of course, in nullsec, you might be mining out ice belts in nearby systems. The money is relatively lower than some of the previous money making opportunities I've talked about, but it is steady, right? And it's somewhat passive. You can do it while doing other things on another character if you want. And of course, as with the other things, if you do it in lowsec, nullsec, wormhole space, or even in Pochven, the money is going to be noticeably better. And I will say that gas harvesting tends to be more valuable getting started than mining ore. Once you get to more advanced mining, it sort of evens out, but keep that in mind, consider that. Ice mining is also very profitable. It just gets very annoying because everybody wants ice. So, like I said, it's fairly easy to get into when you get started. A lot of folks start out mining. If you are a member of Eve University, you can get ventures the same way you get the same way that you get the explorer ships for free from the flight deck. If you're not sure how to do that, be sure to ask in Discord, how do I get ships from the flight deck? The money is pretty reliable, pretty consistent. You fill up your ship with ore, you're going to have a certain amount of the ore is worth a certain amount of money. It's not super hard. Um, and if you do like shared can events or, you know, mining ops together, it can be a lot of fun. I will tell you, some of my best memories of Eve University when I was just getting started were shared cans and mining ops because we just hung out together. We were just chatting and having fun while we were mining. It was a good time. On the flip side, it might be really boring to you. You might be the kind of person that is like, "Wow, I'm staring at lasers shooting at rocks. This is unbearable." So, it's really about, your temperament, what you're interested in, but for all the reasons I stated previously, it can be worth it. Um, the money is going to be lower, like I said, but I do think it tends to get a lot more close to some of the other activities once you get to the more advanced forms of mining and resource harvesting. Um, it is worth pointing out that mining ships are fragile. Ventures are easy to blow up, so those are your beginning mining ships. Very easy to blow up. Um, Mining barges are also not terribly hard to blow up. Once you get to exhumers, they're a little bit tankier. They're the strong boys of the mining ships, but still, it's worth mentioning that mining ships don't really stand a chance against PvP ships, for the most part. If you fly with a group and you're mining together, you all got your drones out, you might actually be able to fight back. But it's worth saying, mining ships, they break easily. Planetary industry, I'm just going to say this right now, possibly one of the most boring ways to make money. The benefit is you can do it, get it set up, and forget about it for the most part. It is essentially money printing. What it is you warp to a planet, you put a little structure on the planet, then you tell the structure where the resources are, and it pulls the resources from the planet. Then the resources get shot into space, and you can go collect them. Planets, depending on what type of planet they are, will offer different resources. Some are more valuable than others. You can combine those to make even more valuable resources and materials. Just starting out, you can set up a very basic planetary industry factory or harvesting setup, and then as you skill up, you can increase the scale of your PI setup. You can also do this if you're interested in industry and building things. This is super useful. Um, it doesn't require a bunch of skills. If you look in your skill categories, you can find planetary industry and you'll see there's not a bunch of skills that you have to train, and you can get started almost immediately once you've trained a couple of those skills. If you have alts, you can also train them into planetary industry, get all your alts doing it. It does not require a lot of activity. Like I said, that little structure on the planet pulls up the resources and shoots them into space. Every once in a while, you have to go collect those materials from the customs office in space. It is a fairly steady source of income, and you don't really have to do much. The setup is a real bear. It is quite confusing just because it's like, I don't think there's anything quite like PI in the game. It is just a really complicated, like, It's just so unlike anything else in Eve that it feels really, really complicated. But once you get it set up, you're done. You can just say, thank goodness that's over. And now you're printing money. But it is a bit of work to get set up. You will be paying taxes to whoever owns the office that orbits the planet. So if you are in if you are in one of the staging areas for Eve University, you're probably paying taxes to the uni or one of the uni's friendly blues, but it is worth paying attention to because that tax can be quite high, especially in high sec. If you want lower taxes, you're going to want to go to low sec or null sec or even wormhole space. As you get into the more advanced PI, it is going to take more effort. It is going to require harvesting a bunch of different kinds of resources, then combining those resources to make other resources, then combining those to make other resources, more advanced forms. The money is a lot more, but it is going to require more of a time and effort investment on your part. Relatedly, there's industry. This is building stuff using materials from mining, from PI to build stuff. Now, I mentioned when I was talking about PVE, I mentioned BPOs and BPCs. Those are blueprints which you need to build the ships that you fly. You need it to build the modules that you fit your ships with. Blueprints are kind of the thing that makes the whole industry work. Now, industry is sort of the umbrella term, right? Because there's manufacturing, research, invention, reactions, all that good stuff. Um, I strongly recommend that if you're at all interested or even just curious and you want to learn more, strongly recommend you check out the Intro to Industry class because that's going to get more in depth about each type of industry. But essentially, all of this goes into building things. Research allows you to improve your material efficiency. So, the more that you research material efficiency, the less materials you have to use to build something. You can also do time efficiency. So, how long does it take you to build a ship? The more that you research that time efficiency, the less time it takes you to build stuff. Invention is how you create T2 blueprints. So, you want to fly those exhumers? Well, you're going to need invention to make those blueprints. Reprocessing is essentially refining those raw materials that you were collecting or mining into the minerals that you need to build stuff. And reactions are combining raw materials to make better materials essentially. This is mostly it's what you combine different gases to make unique compounds. Onward. So industry can be profitable. It is the kind of thing that if you really like noodling out a whole bunch of different elements to create something that's going to be, industry is probably going to be your thing. It is something that you can do in the background. A lot of times there's moments where you have to actually do something actively, but for the most part, things just, you just let it cook, basically. Let it cook. Okay? It is probably going to require some investment from you. Members of Eve University can probably reduce the amount that you spend to get started by using blueprint copies. The Eve University maintains a very large blueprint library, so consider, if you have access, making copies of things that you want to build, or asking someone to make copies for you if you can't make them yourself. When you get started, you're not going to make a lot of money. In fact, there is always the possibility that you're going to lose money because you're putting more money into the resources than you are making money off of the product that you finally built. Things that you build may require you to do reactions, which are things that you can't do in high sec. You'll probably have to go to NSC, the nullsec community, or you can also do reactions in wormhole community. But be aware that if you want to build things using materials that you've gathered yourself, you've been doing all the mining, all the gas harvesting, all the PI to get the resources that you need to build what you want to build, you're going to have to do some of the stuff like reactions outside of high sec. So just be prepared for that. It's not a huge deal, but it is something to be aware of. Industry is something that alpha clones are going to struggle to do because you can't train up all the skills needed to do high level industry. All right. So, trade. This one kind of makes me, I don't know, it gives me goosebumps because mm, but some people love it, and it works off a number of different principles, just like real world trading. Buy low, sell high. You can do this with modules, you can do it with ships, you can do it with trade goods, resources, all that stuff. You are buying things in bulk at a low price, and then you sell it again for a higher price. And you're not just looking for being able to sell it at a significantly higher price, relatively speaking. You're also looking for being able to sell large amounts of something to increase your profit margins. You can do this in you can either do this in a single station, or you might take the stuff that you bought in one station and go to another station where you can sell it for a higher price. You can also, you know, if you become one of those market tycoons, you can even have a significant impact on the market itself. And doing so can work to your advantage, especially if you want to drive up the price of something. If you are particularly astute, you can get in on the ground floor on a number of different investments that then become bubbles and sell things at a high profit that quickly diminish in profitability just based on the market settling in. It is relatively easy to get started trading, and it is something that you can do kind of with only half your brain. Um, it is the kind of thing that you can do with just a little bit of money that you have sitting in your wallet, and you can end up making quite a bit of money doing it. But as I said, you can lose money doing it, and you can lose big. It is relatively boring because it's doing basically the same thing over and over again. And I will tell you right now, folks refer to trading as market PvP, right? Because you're buying and selling stuff, and other people are buying and selling stuff. And if you're just getting started, you're going up against people who have been buying and selling for a while now, and they know what they're doing, and they probably are familiar with different items, which ones are the most volatile, which are the most stable. So it is worth pointing out that, especially in places like Jita, Amar, Dixie, Heck, Renz, those places are going to be highly competitive. All right, here's another passion of mine, hauling. So a lot of people get started in hauling just by the need to move things for themselves. Um, but you can do it like in distribution missions. You're going to be moving stuff for NPCs, but you can also move it for friends, for the corp, for and for profit, right? Now, generally, once you are doing it for more than just yourself, you're going to come across courier contracts, which are contracts that basically spell out the details. What are you taking? Where are you taking it? And how much are you going to get paid for taking it? There might also be a collateral that you have to put up. Generally, it's a certain percentage more than what the cargo is. So you might have to put up your own money just to get a contract, to then take the contract, you haul it, then you get paid, you get your collateral money back. Most folks will start with your T1s. These are your Teras, your Badgers, um, your Nereus, your Iteron Mark Fives, your I don't even remember what the Amar and the Minmatar ones are, but you get the idea. You'll start out with those. You'll be moving from station to station. Maybe you're out mining and you use a miasmas to move your ore around relatively easy. But then if you train into hauling at a more advanced level, you're going to start flying blockade runners and deep space transports. And then eventually you'll be able to fly freighters and jump freighters. I will note this is not an alpha-friendly career. Alphas can only use T1 haulers, so for the most part, you're not going to be doing a whole lot of hauling as an alpha except for maybe yourself or maybe a friend moving stuff from station to station. But it is a legit career in EVE Online. There are entire corporations dedicated to hauling, such as Red Frog or PushX. These folks are dedicated to the logistics of moving things, right? These are your in-game equivalents to, FedEx and UPS, right? DHL. Now, you may not think so, but I think being a space trucker is pretty darn cool. Um, Lots of people love and respect a space trucker. The money is or can be good, and everybody's going to be super grateful to you. It is so helpful to have somebody haul stuff for you. It is a challenging way to play, even though on the surface it may not seem like it. Um, there's especially once you get into more advanced hauling, there's going to be things like planning your route, gathering intel about potential threats. Um, so it can be challenging, especially at the more advanced levels. Um, you are going to run the risk of gankers and folks just looking for some content, especially if you're hauling in low sec or null sec. Um, when you get to the point where you are flying freighters and jump freighters, you may need alts, especially with jump freighters. You're going to need alts or buddies, and that can be a learning curve for some folks. So be aware there is a learning curve to hauling. It is not just jumping in a ship and setting your destination and turning on autopilot. In fact, that's a great way to lose your ship. So there is also such a thing as making money from PvP. Now, getting started, it might seem hard to believe because you're going to lose a lot of ships in PvP, and it's going to feel like all you do is spend money on ships. How the heck do you make money? By blowing up other people's ships. But there's a number of ways to do it, and if you are a member of EVE University, I strongly recommend that you familiarize yourself with the SRP, the Ship Replacement Program. If you lose a ship doing PvP, the university will give you some money to help you replace your ship. There are limitations, so please check out the EVE University Wiki, check out the details on the SRP, but be aware that that's a thing, and it can make learning PvP a lot less painful. Once you get a good head for PvP, there are things like mercenary corps, right? Mercenaries take contracts from other corporations to accomplish an objective, and they get paid quite well for it, right? So if you have the fantasy of being, you know, if you want to be the Boba Fett of New Eden, it's certainly possible. There are also, folks who gate camp and make all their money that way. There are also folks who blow up structures in wormhole space. Structures in wormhole space are giant loot pinatas, and it can be worth a lot of money to do so. There is also faction warfare. Faction warfare generally pays out its best money in LP, right? We talked about LP with mission running. Faction warfare also offers you LP, but there is a way to do PvE and PvP and get paid for it. And then, of course, there is always ganking. Now, if you are a member of EVE University, you cannot do high-sec ganking, okay? That's something to look forward to once you move out of EVE University, if that's something that interests you. While you're in the university, there's no high-sec ganking allowed. The thing about PvP is that it is incredibly fun. Even when you lose, it is exciting. Um, People talk about getting the shakes from PvP, right? You get in a fight and your blood just starts pumping and you're just like pumped. I mean, the rush is incredible, right? In case it wasn't obvious, PvP is a big part of what EVE Online is all about. It is the most in-depth, ever-adapting aspect of the game. It is also something that all you alpha clones can do for relatively cheap, especially if you're going to jump into faction warfare, get in your small ships, go out there, shoot stuff. Of course, when you get started, you are going to lose some ships. You are going to lose a lot of ships, more likely. It is not always the most fun to make money through PvP, especially things like structure bashing, which I will add, EVE University's rules of engagement do not allow for structure bashing without director approval. But that stuff is boring. Structure bashing is boring. Boring, boring, boring. I do it all the time on my main. It's very boring. When you are starting to look at higher end PvP, whether that's battleships or more advanced styles of PvP, you're going to quickly run up against some serious barriers as an alpha clone. You're not going to be able to fly T2 ships. You're only going to be able to train your skills up to a certain point, which means even if you can technically fly the ship and use all the modules, you may not be able to train up the support skills enough to actually fly the ship. You might be over on CPU or power grid, or maybe your cap just does not support being able to use the ship the way it was intended. There are, of course, a bunch of other different career opportunities out there, and some of them are reliable, some of them not so much. There's things like skill farming, there is tourism, you can run missions for people and share your standings for profit. Um, I mentioned hunting clone soldiers. I consider that more PvE, but you can also become essentially a real estate agent, selling, finding and selling wormhole systems to people. You might make money off of running a corporation. There's scamming and theft. You can steal stuff from corporations. Um, I will point out that when we say scamming here, I'm not talking about things that violate the terms of service or the end user license agreement. I am talking about tricking people uh, using social skills to trick people into making money. Um, and of course, there is spycraft. Spying is a big thing in EVE Online. Um, if you are someone who joined EVE University because of Down the Rabbit Hole, then you're probably familiar with examples of espionage. Um, there's money to be made in a number of varieties. These are some of the more peculiar ways to make money, or perhaps things that are not going to be for the majority of people. Now, I sort of hinted at this, but generally speaking, you don't just do one thing to make money. Generally, people don't just run missions or mine or, do industry. It is common for folks to do a bunch of different things. It breaks up the boring aspects of any particular activity. It offers you a variety of income, so not just in terms of how much money you make, but also the kinds of income you're taking in. So it could be, you know, one day you're doing things because you need the LP, another day you're doing it just for the ISK. Some days you might do it because you need the resources so you can build something and then sell it. As a C5 wormholer on my main, I do a bunch of stuff. I haul stuff in for the court as well as myself and my court mates. Um, we do huffing, we do mining together. Um, we are always scanning, always, always, always scanning. I will say I don't run data and relic sites much anymore, but I could if I wanted to. Um, building stuff happens all the time. And of course, the most holy of activities, PvP. These are all things that I do just in my day to day. You will probably end up doing a variety of things to make money. And it'll probably include some of these things and maybe a few other things, right? Now, if you are particularly interested in one career, there's one thing that really stands out to you as something that you really enjoy, you really love it, and you want to do it at a higher level, you might want to consider moving to a corp that does that as their primary focus. And you can do this by meeting people who also do that thing, whether it's mining or mercenary work. You can meet folks, talk to folks, make friends, and find out which corporations are doing what. You can also check Reddit r/evejobs. People post about corporations that are recruiting. There is a recruiting forum on the official Eve online forums that you can check as well. And occasionally there are corporations that will post in the uni forums or host an event where they talk about their corporations. Um, all of those are ways that you might find the corporation that does what you're really interested in doing, and may be an opportunity for you to do that thing at a higher level, whatever career interests you. It is a good idea to be aware of, are they going to be receptive to you at the level that you play currently? If you're just getting started out, you're going to want to make sure that they're open to new players. You're going to want to check out what kind of services they offer. Do they have SRP? Do they have a hauling service? Do they have a buyback program? What are the taxes like? I do teach a class called Moving On from Eve University that goes into this more in depth, so keep an eye out for that if you're interested in learning more about how do I know when it's time to move on from Eve University and where do I find my next corp. It is worth looking at what other people say about a corporation, keeping in mind that rivals will say the nastiest things and friends will sing their praises. So check out what's up. If you are looking to do PvP, check Zkill. If you are looking at joining a industrial corporation, check out, you know, how much are they bringing in? How much do each individual member, how much do they make? It's worth investigating. You don't have to leap before you look, unless you really want to. And since there is no class in attendance here, if you have questions, feel free to leave those in the comments of this video. I will try to answer as many as I possibly can. Otherwise, I thank you for watching. Give me a like, subscribe, and hit the bell button if you want to stay up to date on videos that I make. Um, I wish you all the best. Fly safe.